All right, friends. This is the last section that we are going to be diving into. We just did the non-relational database group work. I hope that that was good for you. I hope that you dove in and got to really experience some of the material. And I hope that you guys got to share that and present that to your group. And I hope that that was a learning process that was good for you in this entire thing. Like, just as a reminder, all we have left is I've got about 45 minutes of talking about data warehouse analytics. The different things that we can do, the different tools that we can do, really heavy in sort of the tools we can do with data warehouse analytics. And when we have a data warehouse and data lakes, the tools that Azure has to really handle that stuff well. And then we will decide if we're going to do the knowledge check. We're a little bit behind time, so we probably won't do the knowledge check. But if you guys really, really want to, we can. And then we will do the next steps for sure. So if we're just starting, we're going to really dive into data warehouse analytics. But before we do that, we should probably define sort of what a data warehouse is. And a data warehouse gathers data from many different sources within an organization. So it's not just one place, but a warehouse gathers data from all over. And then this data is used as the source for analysis, for reporting, online analytical processing, machine learning, right? All of this information. And the whole focus of a data warehouse is to provide answers to complex queries, right? If I want to do joins, if I want to see how things are connected, we totally can. Unlike a traditional database, which is focused more on transactional performance. So I can see some more complex things of how, why is this sale correlated with, this event or something within my company. And that's where a data warehouse is really going to come in. There's a video here that, give me just 1 second and make sure that I am sharing my sound, share computer sound. Here's a video here that we're going to watch. I think it's about 4 or 5 minutes long. The whole point is we're going to watch it and you're probably not going to understand a ton of it, but then we're going to talk about every single piece. And after we do, we're going to rewatch it and hope and see if we can understand more from that. So let's go ahead and watch this.
The data from relational and non-relational services is retrieved and formatted by using Azure Data Factory. This process is known as ingestion. The formatted data is written to Azure Data Lake Storage. Azure Data Lake Storage enables you to store large volumes of data quickly and easily prior to analyzing it. At this point, the data can proceed down 2 paths. The data is converted into a normalized format suitable for analysis and stored using Azure Synapse services. Alternatively, you can use Azure Databricks to perform other forms of data preparation. For example, you might need to perform additional data transformations or cleaning to remove anomalies and generally tidy up the dataset. You can store the cleansed data using Azure Synapse Analytics if required. Azure Synapse Services acts as a hub holding clean business data. You can perform a detailed analysis of the analytics data using Azure Analysis Services. Azure Analysis Services enables you to dig deeply into the data and generate insights from the information it contains. Microsoft Power BI can take this information and use it to generate graphs, charts, and reports. Power BI can also run ad hoc queries against the data processed by Azure Databricks.
Awesome. So that was not quite as long as I had thought it was. But at the beginning, you probably didn't understand a ton of what was going on right there, but we're going to dive into that. So the first thing it kind of talked about was this Azure Data Factory, and that's described as just this data ingestion service, right? Taking all the data and it retrieves data from one or more data services, and it will convert it into a format that you process, right? That you can do certain things with. So it might present data in multiple different ways. And your data might contain something called noise, which is just things that aren't going to help, right? But actually might be something we need to filter out. I guess something I'm thinking of noise might be if we're trying to get a trend of our users, right? A phone number might be a piece of data that we have, but the way cell phones really work now, like I have a cell phone that has an area code of New Mexico, but I've lived in Washington for the last like 3 years, right? People keep sort of their cell phone numbers unless something, happens, right? They typically don't change it. So if we're trying to look at our data and the different things that are happening and maybe looking for insights to target, what market is really going to play a big portion of where we're running sales or, something of that nature, a cell phone number might not do a ton for just that predictive analysis. Now, it might be great for something else if we want to send a text campaign, if I want to do something there, but that might be a noise piece because it doesn't really do much for us, right? It doesn't really tell us much about the user. It doesn't really tell us anything other than we have their phone number, because the way cell phones now, the way they work and the way we, sort of keep our numbers no matter where we travel to or live doesn't really help us. So that may be something like noise that we consider there. Yeah. So an Azure Data Factory can also write ingested data to a data store for subsequent processing. So if it's not in the right format, it can write it and put it in that right format. And then what we do is when we are describing the work performed by a data factory, we call that as a pipeline of operations. So anything that the data factory is doing, we call that the pipeline of operations. Then after the data has been ingested, right, we have something called a data lake. And that's basically a repository for large quantities of just raw data. Because data is raw and unprocessed, it's very fast to load and update, right? Because we haven't done anything with it yet. It's very, very quick to load, very, very quick to update, but it hasn't been put in the exact structure that we need it to do for efficient analysis, right? If I'm talking about numbers, kind of like what I was saying about the noise, right? If I need to put it in a particular structure, that hasn't happened yet in our data lake. A data lake is really like we're just dumping all of our data. We take in our data with our data ingestion, clean it and kind of take out the noise if I need, or kind of structure it in a certain way. But then I put it in a data lake and that just has everything, right? Now I can retrieve it really, really quickly, but it's not in a particular sort of format or anything of that nature. It's kind of I like this. It says you can think of a data lake as a staging point for your ingested data before it's massaged and converted into a format suitable for performing analytics, before it really is what we need in order to make our tree map or our line graph or our prediction, or to put in our machine learning. That raw data is what we consider our data lake. A data warehouse does also store large quantities of data, but the data in a data warehouse has been processed to convert it into a format for an efficient analysis. So just the difference between a warehouse and a lake, you can kind of think of a lake as just a bunch of, like a pool of data, right? Hasn't been processed, but it has raw data, where a warehouse holds structured information. So there is something, you can kind of think about a lake is just water, right? It's a puddle, it's a big puddle, versus like, let's say you have a barn, right? There's a frame, there's a way that it was set up. It was created that way. It's not just this raw natural thing. Then we have something called Azure Databricks, and that's an Apache Spark environment running on Azure. And what it does is it provides a big data processing. So if I'm processing or streaming or doing any sort of machine learning with large amounts of data, like I'm talking a lot of data, Databricks will allow me to do that. So Apache Spark is a tool there that is highly efficient. It's a highly efficient data processing engine. So it can consume large amounts of data very, very, very quickly. Like we're talking super duper large amounts. And what's great about Apache Spark is that there's a ton of different libraries that you can do to perform different tasks. Like if you need something for SQL processing or aggregations, or to build and train machine learning models, Spark has those libraries. It's one of the things, if you think about development, right? One of the things that makes Python really great is that there's a ton of libraries to make anything you need to do very, very easy, right? You can just kind of import that library and then learn how to use it. Same thing with Spark. That's one of the benefits of it, is it has a ton of libraries to kind of fit and do whatever you need with your data. Then there's also the data, or the Azure Synapse Analytics, and that is our analytics engine, right? So it also processes large amounts of data very, very quickly. And it can ingest data from external sources such as flat files or an Azure data lake. So it can ingest all of that. And what it does is it transforms and aggregates this data into a format suitable for analytics processing, specifically for complex queries that's going to generate some sort of report or some sort of graph or some sort of chart. If I'm wanting to visually see something, the Azure Synapse Analytics is really going to be a tool that can process that very, very quickly, large amounts of data very, very quickly. But then it also sets it up in a way that is good for visually showing some sort of analytics. There's also the Azure Analysis services. Again, these are just a lot of services that Azure provides for large amounts of data. But this enables you to build tabular models, so more of like a structured or relational data to support online analytical processing queries. So again, if I wanted to do some of those like SQL queries, I can use the Azure Analysis services, and that will enable me to take my data and build tabular models, very, very similar to SQL, to support that OLAP queries right there, which is kind of cool. Now, if we're comparing the two, the Synapse versus Analysis, it might be like, well, what makes, they kind of sound the same, right? They can both process large amounts of data quickly. And here's a breakdown of sort of the differences and the real big things that, kind of make it differ. The Synapse analytics is very, very high volume. So when we say a lot of large amounts of data, the analysis can do a few terabytes, which is a lot, right? Like if we think about our computers, or if we think about, a terabyte of data is quite a bit. And so using analysis can do that. But in the scheme of data, that's actually that's a smaller volume set. The Synapse can do multi-terabyte or petabyte size data sets, which is the next step, right? So massive amounts of data Synapse can work through versus Analysis is just a few terabytes. The Synapse Analysis also does very complex query and aggregations. And then the analysis can correlate multiple services or sources, right? So it really just is, again, for showing maybe a correlation between two different things. Synapse is great for data mining and exploration. And Analysis is great for high read concurrency, meaning that if multiple people are viewing this or needing to see this, or I have a bunch of users doing this, they can at the same time, right? Synapse can do the ETL, right? The ETL operations. They can do it sort of complexly, like cleaning my data and then loading it. Versus Analysis is a detailed analysis and drilling into data using functions and Power BI, right? And so it really, really, really takes that data and then puts it in Power BI to use. And lastly, the Synapse Analytics is low to mid concurrency. So there's a limited amount of users, about 128 users or fewer, versus, again, the high read concurrency for the analytics or the Analysis services. But then Analysis services also has a rapid dashboard development from tabular data. And so quickly I can take that and put that in a dashboard and visually see that information. There's another one to note too. If we're talking about really big data processing services, especially when it comes to like machine learning, is that Azure Hd Insight. And again, it can take in a large amount of data, just like the Synapse, right? And it provides that for technologies such as Spark in the Azure environment. So in Azure in itself, utilizing Spark and its libraries, I can use Hd Insight to handle the large amounts of data. It uses something called a clustered model that distributes the processing across a set of computers. So there's this thing called scaling, right? And in utilizing multiple computers. And so that could also be like a cluster. And so that's how Hd Insight is. It implements and distributes the processing task among a set of computers, which is also cool. And it's very, very similar to Synapse Analytics, except that the nodes, so like if we're getting into the nitty gritty, the nodes are running the Spark processing engine rather than the Azure SQL database. And so it just is a different way to run this, and it has a different, it uses nodes versus our Azure SQL database. You can use the Azure Hd Insight in conjunction with or instead of Synapse. So that's what I was saying. Both Hd Insight and Synapse are kind of your two for a massive amount of data. And again, Power BI, we've talked about this at the beginning or in the first session, where Power BI is just a collection of software services, apps and connectors that work together to turn your unrelated sources of data into coherent, visual, immersive, and interactive insights. So this is going to be a big tool for data analysts. Harley, sounds like you use Power BI and Power Apps for your work. So yeah, really using this to take in data, to visually show it, and then have it interactive, kind of like what we were talking about. If I need to, you know, uh, do like 2017 numbers and I just want to see the stats for there, I can do that through Power BI, which is a cool tool. Here's how it works. It first goes, and this was a question on the exam, on the certification, where I wanted to know the process of how Power BI works, right? And so there's a 3-step sort of thing where Power BI desktop goes to Power BI service and then Power BI mobile. And so just knowing, just knowing that the process is it goes from desktop to the service and then service to the mobile, it allows it to show it on the mobile. It just asked, it was a drag and drop to say like, okay, what is the process here? So coming from my desktop, I can then make it a service and then I can view it on my mobile as well. So just knowing it goes desktop to service to mobile. Yeah, that was just a drag and drop on the actual exam itself. You know, what is the order in which this goes? So some of the building blocks of Power BI, because this is a Microsoft tool, it is a big portion of the exam, right? Is it does visualization. So it's really great at visualization and just visually representing our data. It can take in data sets. So a collection of data that Power BI uses to create its visualizations. It's great for reports. It has a collection of visualizations that appear together on one or more pages. So I can say, okay, I think this report and this report this visualization and this visualization show really, sort of hand in hand. This is the best thing to answer this question. I can put those on one or more pages. I can also create a dashboard, which is just going to be a collection of visuals from a single page that I can then share with others, right? And so I can use the desktop to create a service, which is a dashboard. And then from there, they can view it on their mobile. And then lastly is a single visualization on a dashboard is just called a tile. So if I'm looking back at this, a single visualization here would be called my tile. And this would be my dashboard, right? So I can do this, I can generate it on that, create a dashboard, and then from there I can view it on my mobile. And these are just some definitions, right? If we're talking about Power BI, some things that we saw on the exam, kind of asking, drag and drop, or which one of these is best describes a tile, and it's a single visualization on a dashboard of Power BI. Cool. So now, after we've kind of talked through all those different pieces, let's rewatch this video and see if we can further understand a little bit more, right? Where we have the data ingestion to data lake, then we have either Databricks or Synapse or HD Insight, right? Going to analytics and then going to visualizations with Power BI. Let's see if we can understand it a little bit better.
The data from relational and non-relational services is retrieved and formatted by using Azure Data Factory. This process is known as ingestion. The formatted data is written to Azure Data Lake Storage. Azure Data Lake Storage enables you to store large volumes of data quickly and easily prior to analyzing it. At this point, the data can proceed down 2 paths. The data is converted into a normalized format suitable for analysis and stored using Azure Synapse services. Alternatively, you can use Azure Databricks to perform other forms of data preparation. For example, you might need to perform additional data transformations or cleaning to remove anomalies and generally tidy up the dataset. You can store the cleansed data using Azure Synapse Analytics if required. Azure Synapse Services acts as a hub holding clean business data. You can perform a detailed analysis of the analytics data using Azure Analysis Services. Azure Analysis Services enables you to dig deeply into the data and generate insights from the information it contains. Microsoft Power BI can take this information and use it to generate graphs, charts, and reports. Power BI can also run ad hoc queries against the data processed by Azure Databricks.
All right. So now that we've seen that video, does that make a little bit more sense, right? If we sort of look at it, does that make a little bit more sense from what we kind of are talking about? Are there any questions on data warehouse analytics and anything within a data warehouse and the whole process? Any questions from you guys? So there's a lot of things you can do and you can explore with data, right? And it's really, really cool. Microsoft has a ton of tools that really can help you show and visualize data. And so, yeah, it's a cool thing. And Power BI is a very, very, very popular tool as well. Cool. Well, so it looks like it is 2:47. That did not take quite as long as I had anticipated. So a couple of things. We can either do a knowledge check if you'd like. We can absolutely do that. It's a game where we can kind of test our skills and knowledge. Or we, if you guys are kind of brain dead, then that's totally okay. I'm going to create a poll. And if you guys are sort of brain dead, that's totally okay. And we can kind of just talk about next steps. So I'm going to say, what should... I do just want to also make sure that I'm aware and weary of your those of you that are on the East Coast. So can you guys see that poll?
No.
Let's see. Oh, now. Okay, now I just launched it. So it's just a poll. If you guys would like to do the knowledge check game, we totally can. If you guys would like just to do next steps and have this, sort of conclude this, especially for you that are on the East Coast, you can absolutely do that as well. So I did just launch the poll. Oh, it's coming down. Oh, and with the last one, they came in with the knowledge check game. So it was 4-3 out of 7. So we will go ahead and do that knowledge check game. Give me just 1 second to get it set up. All right, friends, here's the Kahoot from the morning. Core data concepts and relational data, what we talked about this morning. It's going to give you a question. I'll read it and then give the answer immediately. It's going to have these different symbols, so make sure to do that. How is data in a relational table organized? Rows and columns, header and footer, or pages and paragraphs? Rows and columns, header and footer, pages and paragraphs. Yeah, way to go. Just as a reminder, relational database is tabular, right? And so it is in rows and columns. The non-relational database is not in a table, but relational database is a row and a column. Way to go. Harley 2 in the lead. All right. Which of the following is an example of unstructured data? Is it employee table with columns, imp ID, imp name, imp designation, audio and video files, or a table within a SQL Server database? Which one is an example of unstructured data? Yeah, exactly. Remember the unstructured data of audio and video files and those pictures, and then semi-structured would be more of like a document. Way to go. Oh, cool. So there's 20 total. Which of the following is an example of a streaming data set? Data from sensors and devices, sales data for the past month, list of employees working for a company. Okay. So data from sensors and devices, remember a list of employees working for a company, streaming data set, the streaming data that we're streaming and batch, right? And streaming is consistently like seeing things. So data from sensors, maybe it's a heart rate monitor or even a sensor from like an air conditioner, those sort of devices versus some sort of like batch processing. So way to go. All right. Which of the following tasks is a role of a database administrator? An administrator, backing up and restoring databases, creating dashboards and reports, or identifying data quality issues. Remember, there was the database administrator, the engineer, and the analytics. Yeah, way to go. Backing up and restoring databases. That is really one of the main jobs of a database administrator, setting certain things and then doing that. The data engineer is who's identifying data quality, right? And then the data analyst is doing the creating dashboards and reports. Which of the following tools is a visualization and reporting tool? We talked about it both in both the morning and the afternoon. Is it SQL Server Management Studio, Power BI, or SQL? It's a data visualization and reporting tool. Yeah, exactly. Power BI is Microsoft's main tool for that. Oh, Harley's still in the lead. Which of the following roles is not a data job role? System administrator, data analyst, database administrator. Yeah, one thing to sort of think about, especially on the exam, it might ask something like this. It's pretty good kind of thing to rely on is if it doesn't have the word data in it, it probably isn't a data role, especially for this when it comes to this certification. So systems administrator is oh no, yeah, not the following. So the database administrator is a data job, right? That we talked about, and the data analyst as well. So it's the systems. Way to go. All right. Which of the following statements is a characteristic of a relational database? All data must be stored as character strings. A row in a table represents a single entity. Different rows in the same table can contain different columns. Which is a characteristic of a relational or tabular database? Yeah. A row in a table represents a single entity. As a reminder, different rows in the same table can contain different columns is not right for a relational. A relational database, remember if we talked about it, even if somebody doesn't have to have a middle name, they still have that middle name column. Its value is just null. So a row in a table represents a single entity. Oh, whoa. We have a new leader. What is an index? Enables you to locate rows in a table quickly using indexed value. A virtual table based on the result of a set of a query. A structure comprising rows and columns that you use for storing data. Yeah. So enables you to locate rows in a table quickly. That's an index. A virtual table based on the result of set query, that'd be a view, right? And then the structure comprising rows and columns that you use for storing data is just our table, our non-relational database in itself. Way to go, guys. All right. Which is a benefit of using a platform as a service instead of using an on-premise systems to run your database management systems? Either A, increased day-to-day management costs, increased scalability, increased functionality. Think about when you were reading through platform as a service. What is the benefit of using that to run your database management system? So it's going to be increased scalability. The big thing with the cloud, right, is if I need more data, if I need more processing power, if I need more of anything, I can instantaneously get it. Versus on-premise, right? If I need to scale, if I am starting to get a lot of customers and I need a larger database, I have to buy a new server. I have to buy new data. I have to buy that quickly. I have to wait till that comes in, right? And then I can scale out. I have to set up my entire system. Whereas in the cloud, I can just basically click a button and or a couple buttons, and then it is scaled out to where I can handle it almost immediately. So scalability is one of the main things for cloud computing and why it is really, really so prominent. Let's see. All right. Patrick says he's coming. Harley's coming for the throne. I love it. Which of the following services should you use to implement a non-relational database? So remember the service, right? What Azure service? Azure Cosmos DB, Azure SQL database, or the Gremlin API to implement a non-relational database. We talked about this one, and this one was basically all of them had an aspect here. Or, you know, there was an API that this certain tool could use. Yeah, it's the Azure Cosmos DB. And when you think of non-relational databases, that is going to be your main sort of fix. The SQL database, SQL in itself is a relational database, and the Gremlin API is going to be great for graphs. But we're thinking about implementing a non-relational database. Cosmos DB, as Harley said, is goated. It is the main one. What does this show media do? Oh, that's dumb. Okay. Oh. Which of the following is a characteristic of non-relational databases? Non-relational databases contain tables with a fixed column of records. They require you to use normalization techniques to reduce data multiplication. Non-relational databases are either schema-free or have relaxed schemas. Yeah. So non-relational databases are either schema-free or have relaxed schemas, right? There is no certain thing you have to follow. It doesn't have to be, you know, a certain first name, last name, et cetera, et cetera. Normalization is really going to be in your, you know, is really in your tabular data. If we're storing a user, and we talked about having an address, right? And I could normalize that out to where I'm not repeating data. That's going to be more of a relational database, but non-relational databases are either schema free or have a very, very relaxed schema to where you can do a lot more different things. And Harley got the throne back. All right. So this is going to be an image. It's going to be a little bit longer. So we gave you some more time. You're building a system that monitors the temperature throughout a set of office blocks and sets the air conditioning in each room and each block to maintain a pleasant ambient temperature. Your system has to manage the air conditioning in several thousand buildings spread across the country or region, and each building typically contains at least 100 air-conditioned rooms. What type of NoSQL data store is most appropriate for capturing the temperature data to enable it to be processed quickly? A key value store, a column family database, or write temperatures to a blob in Azure Blob Storage. Yeah. So it's actually going to be, remember, the key value is the quickest thing. If I'm going back to the question, what it was talking about is basically I'm getting these temperatures and I just need to read and write, right? And so this key value is the quickest way to read that and take it. And all I'm getting is the temperature. So I don't have a list of data from like a user. So a key value, especially when it says quickly, when I see that word quickly, that is the one that, okay, key value is the quickest one there. Yeah, that one got all you guys. Well, not all of you. Not SC. All right. What is data ingestion? Transforming raw data into models containing meaningful information, analyzing data for anomalies, capturing raw data streaming from various sources, and storing it. Yeah. So remember, data ingestion is that first piece, right? It's taking it from a bunch of different sources, whether it's some sort of device or financial transactions or whatever. It's all these different sources. It's taking data and it is capturing that from all the different sources and storing it. And then it either goes to like a data lake or I go into cleaning it. So that's what data ingestion is. All right. Which of the following visuals displays the major contributors to a selected result or value? Remember, the major contributors to a selected result or value: key influencers, column and bar chart, matrix chart. I gave the example of, let's say you're doing a sale for the first and second weeks of September in 2001. There might be a contributor of, this, 9/11 might have had an impact. Yep. Key influencers. Remember, key influencers is a visual that will show you what influenced the result, right? If sales are down the second week of September in 2001, it's likely probably, one thing could be a, natural disaster or slash, a terrorist attack, or, 9/11 would be a thing that probably contributed the most to the sales. All right, 15 out of 20. Which type of analytics helps answer questions about what has happened in the past? Descriptive analytics, prescriptive analytics, predictive analytics. What happened in the past? And again, as quick as you answer this, that acts as more points too. So if you know it quickly, answer it. Yep. Descriptive analytics is what has happened. Predictive is what is going to happen, and prescriptive is what should we do moving forward, right? Okay, which deployment requires the fewest changes when migrating an existing SQL Server on-premise solution? Azure SQL Database Managed Instance, SQL Server running on a virtual machine, or Azure SQL Database Single Database? Which deployment requires the fewest changes when migrating an existing SQL Server on-premise solution? The SQL Server running on a virtual machine, right? So if I have that SQL Server running on a virtual machine, it can migrate that the quickest, right? Using those tools, it can migrate an on-premise SQL Server to another SQL Server running on a virtual machine. Great job for the two of you that got that. Which of the following statements is true about SQL Server running on a virtual machine? You install / maintain the software for the DBMS backups or DBMS backups are automated. Software installation / maintenance are automated, but you do your own backups. You do all software installation and maintenance and performing backups. Yeah, so when I have a SQL Server running on a virtual machine, I am doing all software installation and maintenance, and I'm performing all the backups. And I can use tools to do that, but I'm still doing that. So way to go for the one person that got that. Three more left. Which of the following statement is true about Azure SQL Database? Scaling up doesn't take effect until you restart the database. Scaling out doesn't take effect until you restart the database. Scaling up or out will take effect without restarting the SQL database. Yep, scaling up or out will take effect. It would be a real large pain point if every time you had to scale up or out, you had to restart the entire thing. That just could be some problems there. So yep, you can scale up or out without having to restart it. Way to go. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to click that. When using an Azure SQL Database Managed Instance, what is the simplest way to implement backups? Manual configuration of the SQL Server. Create a scheduled task to backup. Backups are automatically handled. Specifically for the Azure SQL Database Managed Instance. Yeah, backups are automatically handled for that specific tool, right? For the Azure SQL Database Managed Instance, the backups are actually automatically handled for you. So you don't even have to create the schedule. Best way to transfer the data in a Postgres DB running on-premise into a data or DB running Azure DB for Postgres SQL service. So what is the best way to transfer data from an on-premise Postgres to a Azure DB Postgres? Export the data on-premise DB and import it manually. Upload a Postgres database backup file to the database running, or use the Azure database migration services. Yeah, using the Azure database migration services, there are tools, right, that Azure, it wants you to use the cloud, right? And so there are tools that it wants to use, right? That way you can migrate over instead of having to exporting and then importing manually can kind of cause a lot of headache. So there's actually tools that will just do that for you, which is pretty awesome. All right, so for the podium in third place, I've got Titus. Way to go, Titus. In second place, we have Harley. And in first place, we've got SC Steve Chang. Way to go, my guy. Very, very well done. 19 out of 20. That's awesome. Runners up, Wes. And S Chin. Way to go. Good job, guys. Steve's brain is quite simply too big. That's fun. Well played, guys. Cool. So I hope you guys had fun with that. I hope it was just a way that you guys can sort of practice and have some fun with, you know, what we just learned instead of me just sitting and talking and then you sort of leaving. So that was the whole point there. Now, sort of on the next steps, and we're just wrapping up this workshop, is there's a couple things. There are practice tests. Now, I would really suggest you do these. Right now it's $11.99 and they're doing a 30% off site-wide discount. So I think it comes out to like $8.40. And what's neat about this is it is a practice exam. And then it has 279 questions, and all these questions very much so mirror what it's actually going to look like on the exam. So if I log in real quick, I have them. So if I have this, right, your DP-900, you have all these different test sets, which is really cool, right? And so this is going, there's 8 different test sets of questions that it might, right? There were those percentages. So it might, you know, lean a little bit more on one area versus another. But if, as you're practicing, you know, for $8, you get lifetime access to all of this, but you can also go to different questions. So let's say you're really struggling with core data concepts. You can go here, you can go into exam or practice mode. And this will give you 90 minutes, right? And there's 13 questions. So if I started the test, it might say transactional database must adhere to blank properties to ensure that the database remains consistent while processing transformations. What will be the best fit for this? So if I'm looking and I'm like, I do not know what this is, if I click one, it is red, right? Red tells me that, nope, this is not correct. And I can keep going and say, oh, durable. And then it'll give me a explanation. Right. And so it will say a transactional database must adhere to the ACID. So atomicity, consistency, isolation, durability, however you say that word, properties. And then it will give an explanation of exactly what it has to do, which is really, really cool. And then, so this is I mean, it's not, has nothing to do with Coding Dojo per se, but I just think it's a really cool tool. And especially if you're going to spend $50, you might as well pay $8 to really make sure that you learn it. You can do the practice mode, which does exactly what I showed, right? To where if you get it wrong, it tells you, you know, it's red, and then you can click and figure it out. Yeah, I can absolutely drop the link in the chat for that. There are also, there's some free ones. It only is 4 questions to where you can practice if you wanted. But there is some free ones as well. I would just say the $8 is absolutely worth it, especially if you're going to do the AZ900 DP and the AI. You're paying a total of $24, but you're really going to have an understanding of the cloud and have an understanding of Azure in itself. This is going to be a great tool to use. I would encourage it. Again, it's 30% off right now. I don't know when that's going to end, but it is 30% off, which is a cool thing to do. It really will help you. There's a tutorial to kind of walk through the exam. It has a little bit more, you know, kind of details on it, right? So it's active screen, best answer, you build a test, it has some case studies, maybe there's some drag and drop, et cetera, et cetera. So it has some other additional kind of tools that it tells you before you even have to buy anything about the exam as well. So I would encourage you guys to do that. They do exist. And I'll make sure that tomorrow, whenever I send you, the ones, like the follow-up email, I'll make sure that I link this as well. Steve asked, what's the code for the other 2 exams? The other 2 are the AZ900. So AZ for Azure, and then the AI 900 are the other 2. The other thing, the last thing is now to go get certified, right? So tomorrow I will be sending you an email. The email is going to have our all these recordings. So everything we've talked about. So if you wanted to walk through that, you totally can. I'm going to send you the slides, the tools that we've used, the practice test. And then what I will also do is I will be doing, I'll send you a coupon code. So the way it works is whenever you're ready, you will go here to this link, and I'll make sure I send this link as well, but you'll have the slides so you have access to this as well. But you will go to the schedule with Pearson Vue. Now there are some that are, I believe, some people said that you could take it in person. I think with COVID, from my understanding, I didn't know that that was an option. But if there is, then that's awesome. I just didn't know that there was an in-person one with COVID happening. But you will schedule with Pearson Vue. I'm actually going to go back because what it will do is it's going to send you to you will create a Pearson Vue account. And the reason I went back is because it has some of my personal information on there. But you'll create a Pearson Vue account. You'll walk through. You will schedule it. And so you'll schedule it again. I would probably give myself at least 24 hours notice. Sometimes they can accommodate that. Sometimes they cannot. So just kind of be prepared for that. And then it does give a bunch of different times. So like if somebody's, so somebody might be available for, doing a later one or something of that nature. And so you'll create this profile, you'll set up your exam. And then at the very, very end, it'll ask for a coupon code, and that coupon code, you'll just input the coupon code that I give you. Now that code is going to be good until February 23rd. And so, or February 28th, I'll give you the exact date tomorrow, but it will be good for that. I would say, and I would really encourage, especially for the season we're about to go into, I would really, really, really try to finish it and take the exam before like the second week of November. I'd give myself a couple weeks, however long you think. The data one is not near as comprehensive as the AZ 900. So I would give myself more time. I don't know why this is so large. Oh, there we go. I would give myself more time, or I would give myself some time, but I wouldn't give myself, you don't need a month. You probably need 2 weeks. If you studied a couple hours a week, I think you'd be super fine, especially if you understood and retained the data and the information we talked about. But I would say that if you're going to take it after Christmas, I think that's going to be just transparently probably a struggle. Maybe you're better than me. But when you have like holidays and you have a bunch of stuff, sometimes it kind of goes behind you. And then, if you were to set it up, that can be a little bit more of a challenge. So I would try to set it up before, really Thanksgiving. But again, totally up to you. It is good till the end of February. And so, if that doesn't work with your schedule and you think January is best or even February, you can totally do that. I have found that when students actually set the exam, it does and pay for it, right? They have a little bit of skin in the game. They've got $50 in on it. That it does act as like a promoter to study. So if you are having a hard time studying, maybe think about just setting the exam, right? Giving yourself 4 weeks and setting the exam. And then that way, or 2 weeks or something, that way it'll kind of make you study, or else you're out $50 because there's no refunds there. Somebody asked, is it all multiple choice? There are aspects of multiple choice there. Again, there's some drag and drop as well. But it's really just sort of multiple choice and drag and drop. There's not any sort of like write this essay sort of thing. And then is Vue the only option? I believe it is, because of COVID. I believe that Vue is the only option for right now. Yeah, because what the coupon code is going through is the Vue. So yeah, absolutely. And again, at the very end of the checkout, it'll ask for a coupon right before you pay. It'll ask for a coupon, so make sure you put that coupon code in there. Other than that, please let me know when you do pass the exam. I will be sending a reminder basically every week, so starting next week, like, hey, reminder. Let me know when you get certified. It is not for us to hammer you or, anything like that, just as a reminder of I have ADHD. So sometimes I need a reminder. So I'll be sending you an email for the next couple of weeks, just reminding you there. But then, yeah, let us know when you get certified, because we like to celebrate that. I tell our entire team, we like to celebrate because it does help you in the future, and it does help you in the long run of understanding either A, the cloud, or B, understanding just more of this information and how data is handled. So with that, are there any questions? Any additional questions? Well, awesome, guys. Thanks for coming to this workshop. I'm going to stop the recording now.